The Trump administration has accused Europe of being, quote, an incubator for terrorism fueled by mass migration. In its new counter-terrorism strategy paper, the Trump administration alleges that well-organized hostile groups exploit open borders and leftist globalist ideologies. The strategy states that as the birthplace of Western culture and values, Europe must act now and stop its, quote, willful decline. The fresh criticism comes months after Trump's new national security strategy alleged that Europe faced civilizational erasure due to unchecked immigration. All right, I want to bring in now Brandon Bohrn. He is a Transatlantic Relations analyst with the Bertelsmann Foundation here in Germany. Brandon, it's good to see you. This new counterterrorism strategy, I mean, it reads and it feels like the perfect companion to the Trump administration's national security policy that was released last year. How do you see it?
No, I think that's a correct reading. 6 months ago at the turn of the year, we had the national security strategy and the national defense strategy. The national security strategy is actually cited multiple times within the Europe languages that you just referenced in this new counterterrorism strategy. So, in many ways, I think it's helpful to look at these documents as a sense of what the political priorities are of the administration, certainly not a roadmap. With a look to Iran, for example, there are multiple inconsistencies and contradictions between how policies are being displayed in these types of documents and how they're actually being implemented. But, on this point, on migration, on the political direction of Europe, there's actually been relative consistency throughout these past 18 months.
This is the Trump administration's first counterterrorism plan since back in 2018, and it doubles down on what it calls left-wing extremist groups domestically, but also internationally. And I'm thinking here of Antifa, for example. Do we get concrete examples of these threats in this new strategy plan?
No, and I think that's the issue. I mean, if you read the Europe section of this document, there's not a single stat cited. It's not based in factual reality. Not to say that Europe is necessarily insulated from terrorist attacks or from left-wing terrorist attacks. It's not based in factual reality. If you look at something like the global terrorism index, which is considered worldwide to be the most respected platform at tracking these types of actions, the United States actually was at greater threat of terrorist attacks in 2026 than any single member of the European Union.
Let's focus for a moment on the transatlantic component of this new plan. What does it reveal concerning how Trump views Europe?
Well, this is, again, I think it's been a relatively clear, coherent look from the administration towards Europe. This all started with J.D. Vance's speech at the Munich Security Conference back in early 2025 that folks at that time thought it might be a one-off speech, but in reality, it was brought into official policy language with the national security strategy, as you mentioned, the civilizational erasure that's taking place in Europe, a continent in decline. The administration has actually devoted budgets to the State Department. Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy at State, Sarah Rogers, is actively on this side of the Atlantic supporting actors that are ideologically aligned with the administration, that have an anti-migrational stance, or generally far-right actors. This administration clearly has a view on what it wants the future of Europe to be, and it's clearly implementing its policy in overt ways.
This new counterterrorism plan, it reads, I'm just going to quote a section of it. It says, it is unacceptable that wealthy NATO allies can serve as financial, logistical, and recruitment hubs for terrorists. What message, Brandon, does this send to NATO members on this side of the Atlantic when they read that?
Well, it just speaks to, on the one hand, you have an administration that's far more aggressive towards Europe, but you also have a far more volatile administration towards Europe. It's very difficult for Europe to adapt to the volatility that's coming from Washington these days. Multiple examples that we've experienced over the last 18 months, whether it be Greenland, whether it be the recent spat between the president and German Chancellor Merz over the Iran war. there's this is what Europe is facing at the moment, and we actually have data in the Bertelsmann Stiftung, my organization, just released today, that shows that a majority of Europeans believe that the EU should go its own way after decades of cooperation with the United States.
Yeah.
Clear majorities do not trust the United States as a partner moving forward. And 18 months ago, 51% of Europeans believed the United States was the most valuable ally of the European Union. That has dropped by 20 percentage points since then.
Wow, yeah, that's a huge drop. This plan goes on. I've got one more quote here. We will continue to work with those nations who understand the threat, who take requisite actions themselves. There is significant intel sharing between Europe and the United States. Has that tradition of sharing intelligence, has it just been put on notice here?
Look, this is yet another example of the way in which the United States is implementing a transactional foreign policy in relation to Europe. There are multiple examples of ways in which the administration has used the dependencies that Europe has on the United States to its advantage. In the case of tariffs, in the case of the decision just this past week to withdraw 5,000 soldiers from Germany, the decision is not necessarily based in some sort of clear strategic manner. It's largely punitive. It's largely emotionally based. And these types of decisions are being made at the whims of a president that can be swayed in one direction or another, depending on who's the last person in the room. So, the reality is that this relationship has weakened fundamentally. And the question is, moving forward, if there even is in the future a political shift that maybe results in a more Europe-friendly president returning to the White House, whether the trust, whether the reliability that has been lost over these last 18 months, whether it will be possible to even win that back.
Yeah, it's a very good point. It's a big question. The answer, we'll have to wait a while to see what happens. Brandon Bohrn with the Bertelsmann Foundation here in Germany. Brandon, good talking with you. We appreciate your insights tonight. Thank you.
Good to see you, Brent. Take care.